Lovely. So thanks everyone for coming. I'm expecting a few more people to come in, but you know what it's like working in education. They've probably got wrapped up in something else and will join us a bit later. So just to start off, what I'll do is I'll speak a little bit about our new eco-friendly schools site. I'm just going to pop the link in the chat once more, just so that you can have a look. I know that sometimes when we've had new people join a chat, they can't see what came before they joined. So that one's in the chat there for you now. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to share my screen and show you very briefly a little bit of the content of the new site, just so that you can see what it can do for you. So you should be able to see that now. And on here is the main landing page for the eco-friendly schools section of our website. So we have some blurb about what we're trying to do by putting this here, which is basically to support people like yourselves, schools in Somerset, to be able to be more eco-friendly and also to teach more eco-friendly subjects and get it into the curriculum a bit. We also have some information from Eco Schools. Lee from Eco Schools spoke in our meeting yesterday morning, and that one's been recorded as well, so I'll make sure that gets out to you if you missed it. We also have along the side here are 10 topics which are part of Eco Schools. We are not by any means saying that all schools in Somerset must do Eco Schools. We're just using it because it has a really nice way of putting out the topics. We also mentioned quite a few other accreditations which may be more interesting to you or perhaps simpler to complete for your school or educational establishment. So here we've got the 10 different topics. So we could have a look at one of those. Let's have a look at school grounds, for example, because we're going to be hearing from the property and grounds team today. So on here we have some information from our property and grounds team, all about what they can help you with to help you to become more eco-friendly, or indeed to build up that portfolio of information to be able to prove that you are an eco school. We also have on here the wonderful Carrymore Environmental Trust, the Somerset County Council Ecology Service, and some further resources at the bottom there. You can also see that up at the top here we have curriculum examples. So each of the 10 topics has these, and that just helps you to put it into the curriculum. We're hoping to build on those quite a lot more over time, and also on these various 10 topics, because we know that there's lots more out there. So if we just look at another one quickly, I think biodiversity is always a really popular one. So here we go, you've got your curriculum examples. We've got a little bit of information here about SSE Outdoors. We've got Daniel from SSE Outdoors speaking for us a little bit later. Again, we've got the Ecology Service, we have Bug Life and the Bumblebee Conservation Trust. Again, Carrymore, who we mentioned just a moment ago, Gecko and Tops Day Nurseries. There's lots here, but they've all been chosen because they are able to assist in the Somerset area. So we thought this was a way of making it quite simple and easy to find those that are going to be helpful to you. Lovely. So can I just ask that everybody keeps themselves on mute for the moment, obviously apart from the speakers when they start speaking. We'll have lots of time for questions in between the 3 speakers that we've got, and also some time at the end. So do feel free to use the chat at any point. I will just mention who's speaking today, that's going to help, and then we will move on to our first speaker. So we have from Property and Grounds within Support Services for Education, we've got Chris, and then we're going to have Abby from Energy, Somerset County Council, and then Daniel from SSE Outdoors. So Chris, over to you.
Right, thank you. I will just put my camera on. There we are. So you can see my lovely face. There we go. Bear with me while I just share my screen. So you can see the presentation. Right. Press that one. There we go. Is that okay? Can you see that, Molly? Is that all fine? Fantastic.
Yep, all good.
Right, so lovely. Thank you. Okay, so as I said, I'm Chris Wynn. I manage the landscape service in SSE. We're part of the wider property and grounds team. So my little bit today is just covering some kind of ideas and sort of proposals, options for what you might be able to do with some of your external areas. We've got a few, there's a sort of little announcement on something that we'll give you in a minute, which is all good news. So I'll just jump onto my little list. So we haven't got a huge amount of time to cover, but I'm just going to cover a few of the main points at the moment that are the kind of hot topics, particularly externally at the moment and nationally, that I think we can pass on to you. So it's basically simple steps to help ecology and biodiversity in schools, which if we can obviously improve, that's going to go a long way to helping with your eco school accreditations. So number one, big hot topic at the moment is planting trees. It's something there's been lots about it on the news. We know things about ash dieback, so we are losing lots of trees. Planting trees is a huge, big climate change issue at the moment, and we are in desperate need of more tree cover. And I think, well, we think schools can certainly help with that. The second point we're going to look at is making more room for wildlife, but that's particularly in relation to grounds management practices, maybe changing a few expectations of how school grounds could look in the future. And then lastly, I will just touch a little bit just about developing school grounds to be as diverse as possible. I won't touch too much on that because it's a bit more of the normal things that you're probably already doing, but we'll go through that a little bit as well. So apologies for the very wordy slide, but there's a fair bit to cover in this one. So tree planting in schools. As a whole, Somerset's had a huge decline in trees outside of woodlands. So trees outside of woodlands is an arboricultural term that's becoming a lot more common at the moment. It's reduced to TOW a lot of the time, TOW, which are trees that basically, as it sounds, that are planted outside of woodlands. So individual trees, so in parks, in school grounds, along streets, along roadside, where they're not part of a woodland setting. They've been hugely under threat with development, with budgets, particularly street trees been taken down and just no one having money to put them back. And that's also been the case, particularly in school grounds. My team do a lot of the tree management in schools. We've been taking out trees for a long time, but there's very rarely any trees put back into schools because there's just very little any budget for it. And particularly in Somerset at the moment, ash dieback is another threat we have, which is at significant levels in the county. Worse in some areas than other. Sort of bits of West Somerset are really bad. The Mendips are particularly bad at the moment. But if it hasn't affected your school yet and you have ash trees, sadly at some stage it will affect you. It is going to get around. Now the really good news is that schools are the perfect location for planting trees outside of woodlands, mainly because you've got space. So most trees do have some amount of space that you can plant trees. Trees are more likely to get looked after than if they're planted in some places because you have grounds maintenance contracts set up. And last but not least, really, is they are a fantastic educational resource. They cover so many areas of the curriculum, particularly away from the obvious. Obviously you can cover climate change and biodiversity and ecology and all those kind of things with a tree, but you look at other subjects such as English. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of poems written about trees, stories. You've got all sorts of things, art, maths. They kind of cover all sorts of areas, really. So I think they're a really fantastic resource. Overriding that, we would say that don't go and just plant trees everywhere. We have seen it done in some schools, in some places, not just in Somerset. We've seen reports elsewhere of tree planting in weird and wonderful places, and actually some slightly old species of trees selected as well. So if you are looking at doing any tree planting, we're here to help. So my team, the Grounds and Landscape team and SSE, we can advise on that. We can certainly help you. Quite often if we can do that over email, or if we're doing one-off visits for grounds maintenance or tree inspections, that's certainly something we can help with. We just need to be careful for things, avoiding damage to buildings, building services, causing nuisance to neighbours. There's all those kind of things that we don't want to cause in the future, and considering future maintenance. A lot of time trees are kind of put in the ground and sort of forgotten about, and they don't thrive, they don't develop as they should do. And if we're going to be doing tree planting, we really want those trees to be high quality trees that are going to be there for 50, 100 years plus, hopefully. So obviously watering, mulching, loosening tree ties, again, they're all things we can help with. Now, the really, really good news is there are huge amounts of free trees available from many, many different organisations across the country at the moment, to schools in particular. And the even better news is that SSE are now one of those people. So we've been very recently, as of last week, successful in bidding for some tree planting funds, which are ring fenced to schools. This is the first time we've told anyone, so that's just hot off the press as of now. We'll be getting some communication out to schools for that fairly shortly. So this is through a thing called the Local Authority Treescapes Fund. It's administered by the Forestry Commission. We put a bid into that, so that the County Council put and managed the bid that went in the Forestry Commission, and various other agencies and councils. So there's some district councils, Somerset Wildlife Trust, Mendip, AONB office, I believe, and SSE were successful in having parts of that fund. So you'll probably see some sort of media communication about that as a whole, but for schools, it is just the part that SSE have managed to get hold of. So we've managed to get enough funding for 320 standard trees. By standard trees, we mean proper trees, so trees that are kind of 2 to 3 meters high at the time of planting. You'll see a lot of the free trees that are given away are the very small little trees, which are still lovely, still fantastic, but they just take a long time to have any impact. And we particularly like planting standard trees in schools because they just last longer, they're a bit more durable, and it's very obvious when you plant them that they're there and they can start doing, being used as you want to use them very quickly. So the majority of those to start with will be in the local authority maintained schools because it's funding that's been given to the local authority. But I suspect that we may well widen that to academies at some stage, depending on obviously the take up from maintained schools. We're not going to waste trees here. They will be going in to schools in Somerset. There will be more information about that coming through SSE, through the SSE website, schools newsletters, various other ways. But in the meantime, if you do want to put your school's name forward some tree planting, by all means, please email the email address at the bottom there. So it's sselandscape@somerset.gov.uk, and we will consider you and put you on the list. The one slight drawback to this is we've been told it's got to be planted this planting season, and we only found out last week. So by this planting season, it is between now and the end of March next year, which is so we will be jumping on this very, very quickly. So if you believe your school could take some lovely new trees, then please do let me know, and we'll get in touch and consider putting you on the list. So the next thing, so grounds maintenance. So my team looks after grounds maintenance in about 140 to 50 schools across Somerset at the moment, but this equally applies to schools that are outside of the central contract and that sort of manage your own grounds maintenance contracts. So general schools are very highly maintained spaces, which is completely understandable because you need the space for constant use to support the curriculum. But we started thinking that, is there a way that we can manage school grounds a bit more sensitively to make space for wildlife and actually develop greater biodiversity? And if we can do that and show we're doing that, that can only help towards sort of eco school status and all those kind of things. So we think there is a different way to do things, and we're going to start contacting schools, maybe some pilot schools soon, to see if we can sort of have a go at some of this and just see what difference it makes. So we're going to take a cue from agriculture, things like set aside that you've probably all heard of. It's become quite common practice in agriculture, and that involves basically maintaining parcels of land, margins of land and fields less than they normally would be, so they can develop in a more natural way. So it may be at your school that you have spaces that don't really need to be maintained so highly. There may be areas of grass that we cut every week or two that actually you could look at and think, why do we do that? There may be areas around car parks or bits of land outside the school that the children don't use that you could actually give up for to increase the biodiversity of your school. So like I said, particularly outside areas, outside the main school areas, verges of school fields are quite useful. If you're lucky enough to have a large school field where you don't need to use right up to the very edges, which is highly unlikely, could we take 1 meter or 2 meters of that land and actually not cut that so frequently and let that develop? Very, very simple, low cost or no cost pretty much. saying that, you know, corners of school fields and all these little parcels of land. So we will start talking to schools soon to see if we can identify some of these areas, but it will have a big impact for very, very little work and, like I said, virtually no cost. And again, if you want to look at that, if we maintain your grounds for you, or even if we don't, we can certainly help you anyway. Please email the same address and we'll have a little look for you. And the other thing is kind of looking at the expectations on some of the school sites of having everything looking extremely tidy all of the time. It's absolutely fine to do that, and it's something we've been promoting for a long time, but we're maybe in that situation now where we actually have to take a step back and look at the way we maintain some of the school sites and just think, let's do this differently. And actually is having some areas of school that are looking less tidy and slightly scruffy could well be a good thing. You know, it doesn't have to be immaculate all the time. So again, that's something we are more than happy to look at and see if we can facilitate that for you. So the last thing is really, I'm not going to touch too much on this, but it's kind of the more obvious things really in terms of developing school grounds. So there is a huge range of developments that, in additions really, that you can instigate on your sites to make them more biodiverse, and things that can then help you, you know, to eco-school status. So they are quite obvious things, but things like ponds, nest boxes, bug hotels, log piles, they're very quick, easy additions, you know, low cost, things that can be done very easily and quite often with resources you've already got on site, things that actually the sort of pupils can get involved in as well, which is fantastic. You know, it may be, if you're lucky enough to get funding, that you can do something a little bit larger, you know, some large areas, some planting, some larger ponds, some you know, forest school buildings, those kind of things. So if you get to that point, obviously we are here to help. This isn't intended to be an advert, but we are here to help, so please do get in touch if you need us. And yes, we will see where we go from there. So the last thing is just contact information. I've already shared the email address, but my sort of number and contact details are there. I have put a little link to our landscape e-brochure. There is some information in there about developing school grounds as well. Some of it's, you know, play areas and sports facilities, but we do cover some, you know, ecological projects as well, and wildlife projects. So please do get in touch. We're here to help, and we'll do what we can to push you in the right direction. Thank you. I think we're on to questions, Molly.
Yes, that's brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Did anybody have any questions that they wanted to ask Chris right now? I'll just give it a moment because we can get a little bit of lag here. Equally, you can always type them into the chat there. Okay, so what we'll do is we will move on. Thanks, Chris. To Abby, who's going to speak about energy.
Hi there, my name's Abby. Hello, my name's Abby. Hiya. My name's Abby. I work in the corporate property team at Somerset County Council, and thank you for inviting me today, Molly. I prepared some slides for you, so I'll just share my screen. Okay, and I'll turn my camera off if that's okay. Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you about how you can achieve, how we can support you with your eco-school status in regards to energy. I'll give you a brief update on the climate emergency strategy and the government's the UK's net zero target to 2050 and what that will entail, and some links to some tools and guidance that we've developed to help you achieve eco-schools and run an energy management plan for your school, and a brief update also on the County Council's energy procurement of gas and electricity. So firstly, talking about the climate emergency, climate change and its impacts on the world we live in is one of the most significant issues facing us all today. And the International Panel on Climate Change states that global warming above 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels could lead to increased risk of droughts, flooding, sea level rises, ecosystem change, and consequent species loss and extinction of land, sea, reduced productivity for agriculture and fishing, and climate-related poverty and disease. And to prevent catastrophic climate change, global warming needs to be limited to a 1.5 degrees C threshold. And we're currently heading towards 3 degrees C. So we are in a climate emergency, and we need to do what we can to mitigate those impacts. In 2019, Somerset County Council declared a climate emergency and has since ratified a climate emergency strategy for Somerset in partnership with the district authorities. The strategy provides high-level detail explaining what climate change is, what causes it, and where carbon emissions arise from globally, nationally, and locally, and what the impacts will be in Somerset. A particular impact for Somerset is flooding. The strategy also sets ambitious goals to achieve carbon neutrality across the county and to decarbonise the council's estate and operations by 2030. You can use the strategy, I think, with your students and with your Eco Schools Committee as a reference document to help generate discussion and ideas about where pupils can contribute, both at home and within the school, to help mitigate the impacts of climate change. In response to the climate emergency the UK government has set a legally binding target to achieve net zero by 2050. And another key driver towards the low carbon economy is energy security. Energy security means having an affordable, reliable source of energy. And in light of the recent energy crisis, it's been further emphasised that we need to reduce our reliance on imported fossil fuels and start becoming more energy efficient. So to meet the UK government's 2050 target, it is essential that the UK eliminates the use of fossil fuels for heating and transport. Since 2012, the UK's carbon emission reduction has largely been driven by the power sector through the increase in decentralised power from renewable energy sources. And you can see this represented here on the graph of the orange line. However, emissions from all other sectors, such as transport, residential and business, remain constant due to the continued use of fossil fuels for heating and transport. So what does a net zero world look like, and how are we going to achieve the government's 2050 target? Well, a zero carbon world is predominantly electric. Power generation from clean, renewable and low carbon sources such as nuclear will need to accelerate to support the increase in electrical demand resulting from the electrification and decarbonisation of heating and transport. A whole systems approach to energy is required, integrating energy conservation, efficiency, heat, power and transport supported by a smart, resilient, flexible grid network. And as a result, the UK's energy system will be completely unrecognisable from what we know today. For example, as consumers, there'll be opportunities to play a more active role in the UK's energy system, such as generating our own supply from on-site renewable energy, such as solar PV, and helping to help balance demand on the grid by releasing energy stored from batteries, which could be from our electric vehicles in the future during times of peak demand, where energy is more expensive, and this will reduce overall cost to consumers. Western Power Distribution, they've actually published some really useful videos on YouTube, which explain the net zero future and what it looks like and what changes need to be made to the UK's energy infrastructure. And these will be quite useful to share with pupils so that they gain an understanding of what's needed to achieve net zero and what the system will look like in future. So what is the public sector's role in achieving the government's target and also to achieve net zero? So the Clean Growth Strategy states that it wants the public sector to be a leader in reducing emissions, to reduce the annual energy bill across all public sector buildings in England and Wales, which is estimated to be around 2 billion, and helping to release funds for frontline services. It also states that the public sector has a key role in demonstrating best practice, promoting transparency over emissions reporting, and catalysing markets in energy efficiency by implementing measures at scale. Recently, the government has started to release funds through the Public Sector Decarbonisation Scheme, which is a grant scheme to help local authorities and schools and the public sector to decarbonise heat. The latest round of funding focuses on where heating systems are coming to the end of their useful life. And we must take a whole buildings approach, so incorporating thermal efficiency measures such as insulation and energy efficiency measures such as LED lighting and controls, and also on-site renewables to maximise the savings, ensure that the new low carbon heating systems are correctly sized, and to maximise savings and efficiencies. They've also released funding through the Low Carbon Skills Fund, and I've recently put in a bid to the Low Carbon Skills Fund to carry out feasibility studies across the maintained schools estate. So looking at high energy use schools and where we can help schools take that whole buildings approach to decarbonisation. So I'll be in touch with the schools once we find out some more detail about that. Okay, so whilst we need to make significant capital investment to retrofit buildings to decarbonise heat and improve energy efficiency, it's really important to note that the primary step to achieving net zero is to manage energy and minimise energy waste. And this is also key to achieving the Eco Schools Green Flag Award. So minimising energy waste will help towards the net zero target, but will also save money, as the cheapest kilowatt hour is the one that we don't use. So depending on how a building is currently managed, savings of up to 10% or more can be made by taking no-cost actions, such as turning off equipment and lighting when not in use and optimising heating controls. And it's also really important to recognise that the staff and students are your biggest asset when it comes to driving down energy consumption. They are the eyes and ears on the ground and of the school, and can make a big impact towards helping shape a sustainable school culture and generating ideas for your eco plan. So setting up an eco committee is one of the first stages of the Eco Schools programme. It should be led by the children with support from the adults running the Eco Schools programme, and engaging the children makes them feel empowered to help make changes, and they can play an active role in helping the school to develop your school's energy policy and action plan, helping to set targets, monitor energy use, and monitor progress towards targets, encouraging their peers to save energy, and also communicating and reporting and reviewing the action plan. And to help you develop an energy management plan for your school, we've put together some step-by-step guidance documents and resources, which includes an example energy policy, guidance on setting targets, so for example using display energy certificates, and good housekeeping checklists, which can be used by the school's eco committee and amended to suit the requirements for your school. We've also worked with Team Sigma in the development of the Energy Viewer, which is an online tool which contains electronic copies of all your energy bills and AMR data where fitted. It's being rolled out to all schools which purchase energy via the council's central energy contracts. And it provides you with all the information you need to start to manage spend on utilities. Also, the Energy Viewer is a very powerful way to raise awareness of how energy is being used across your school, and the easy to understand reports provide you with your energy data in an accessible way that can be shared with students of all ages. So some examples of this could be engaging the school's eco committee, monitoring and targeting your energy costs and consumption. It can be used to support curriculum activities, and you can download the reports to present the information and use the data contained in there, so for your billing data and your half-hourly consumption data for energy and carbon reporting. So finally, I'd like to talk about the Somerset County Council's energy contracts. So at the moment, we purchase energy via Crown Commercial Services. We've recently gone out to tender, which went out nationally, to ensure that we're still achieving value for money. And Crown Commercial Services won that tender. We purchase energy using a flexible locked purchasing strategy, where energy is purchased in advance of the delivery period. So the delivery period starts at the beginning of the financial year, and energy is purchased in advance of that to take advantage of dips in the market, and it minimises risk. But the key point here is, at the moment, we're in an energy crisis and gas prices are at record highs. So the traders at Crown Commercial Services are working closely with us and will keep us updated on their risk management strategy to ensure that we minimise risk as much as possible to help with budgets. And this further strengthens the case but that we need energy security. We need a cheap, reliable, we need an affordable, reliable source of energy, which is a key driver for the low carbon economy. Strengthening the case to reduce our reliance on imported fossil fuels, and also the case towards moving towards net zero. So thank you. I've put some information there about the climate emergency strategy, the resources for schools, and if you need information or login details for the Energy Viewer or information about the energy contracts, the contact details are there. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Abby.
you.
I just wanted to check, this is something that I don't know, it might be useful to a few people on the call as well. With the energy contracts, can that be taken up by both maintained and academies?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Yes. Lovely. I thought so, but I thought I'd double check just while you're here. So does anybody have any other questions for Abby whilst she's still on the call? Again, absolutely fine to note those in the chat. We've got Rebecca, would you like to speak?
Hi. Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to say I've got this scenario where a year 6 boy wrote to me during lockdown saying, Mrs. Ayres, I think I'm head teacher at Millbourne Port Primary School. I think we should have a solar panel at our school. And so I sort of said, that sounds like a fantastic idea. And this little boy has set up a little committee, and they've written to a few people about wanting to have a solar panel at Millbourne Port Primary School, and nobody's written back to them. So
Okay.
he's now in year 6, and his aim was to have a solar panel on the school before he left, which I thought was, I think it was somewhat driven by his father, but there we go, he was still involved. Obviously, I get that this is very complex and not straightforward at all, but I'm just wondering in those emails and things that those contacts that you gave, if you can point me in any direction.
Yes. What I can do, I'll send you my email address here as well, and if you want to email me, that would be great.
Yeah,
I'll do that now.
super.
Abby, Also,
Yep.
in the decarbonisation plans I've just done for the 2 schools in and around Yeovil, there are contact details in there for people providing solar panels on the sort of lease a roof scheme, which, if the school is suitable, may be a way to go without any financial input for the school.
Yeah, possibly. We need to check with the estates team regarding lease arrangements.
Yeah, I'm aware. Yeah, but
Yes.
if you have a look in the ones I've done, there's a few links in there for companies in the area who are offering certain services.
Wasn't one of them Milbourne Port as well?
One of them was used Milbourne Port as an example. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We
Brilliant.
have contacted now, someone in the village, but again, they just at the moment they haven't got back to us. But yeah, Milbourne Port has got something going on in the village, so hopefully we will get some communication. But I thought I'd just mention it now.
Yeah, there is a Yeovil area or a South Somerset area energy partnership, isn't there?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So,
Cool. Okay. I'll look into
Excellent.
it.
That's really good. Thank you, Rebecca.
I'll keep you updated.
Brilliant.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Lovely, thank you. So now we'll move on to Daniel, who's going to speak about SSE Outdoors.
Oh, amazing. Thanks very much, Molly. I'm just going to bring up my PowerPoint really quickly and tell me when you can see it. Hopefully, oh, hopefully it's not, that's not it. Oh, hopefully it's starting to appear now.
Yep, we've got that.
Oh, amazing. Brilliant. I can't see the chat, but if anyone wants to ask any questions at any point, please just go ahead, and I'm sure Molly will just flag it up, or feel free to put your microphone on and just ask, because there's not many of us here. I work for SSE Outdoors, and I'm just going to briefly mention some different things we do which connect with different parts of the Eco Schools 10 strands. So introduce what we provide. We work with around 15,000 learners every year across our 4 outdoor centres in Somerset, which are all part of Somerset County Council, so Charterhouse, Kilcourt, Greatwood and the Outdoor Centre. And we also support the Duke of Edinburgh Award, working with 63 different schools and youth organisations across Somerset, trying to engage people in the outdoors. And I have a particular interest in linking that with environmental sustainability, because since being a secondary school teacher over the last 20 years, I've moved into outdoor education and spent over 12 years working for an environmental education charity, trying to link that with provision outdoors. So I'm just going to mention some of the different things we're developing and have developed to link in with the 10 strands of the Eco Schools programme, and all the stuff Molly's been doing to pull together different ways we can support Somerset schools. So first of all, healthy living, and that big focus, particularly with the recovery agenda and everyone returning interrupted 18 months of school education, trying to get people to engage with nature and the benefits many young people have experienced whilst lockdowns have taken place and increased activities happened outdoors. And there's a really strong research base around trying to encourage people to access the outdoors, increases healthy living and well-being. So lots of research from the Southwest, which I've referred to there, including a piece of research came out a couple of years ago, which if you spend 120 minutes a week in the outdoors, doesn't matter whether that's over half an hour at lunch break or all in a big 2-hour block, there's a significant benefit in terms of well-being. So we're really keen whenever we take young people out to the different landscapes around Somerset, whether it be on the Mendip Hills or in the Quantocks, wherever we're doing outdoor activities, we're trying to make sure that young people know how they could return to those locations and not just come for their week's residential or day visit with us, but they can come back with their family and benefit from many of those well-being gains and which are associated with being outdoors. And as well as taking people to wild places and ensuring that they can experience those places and know how to revisit them. We also have a number of sessions we've developed with an explicit focus on taking notice of the outdoors, which is the sort of things that we do, but any school setting could also do using their school grounds and local parks and areas of woodland near to them. So in terms of healthy living, linked types of activities, we do a lot of mindfulness type informed activities, so journey sticks where people are going on a walk around somewhere like Greatwood, picking up objects to link with that walk and creating that stick journey so they can retell the narrative of where they've been, and sound maps, so people are aware of the different things happening around them and sitting in a quiet spot listening to the different noises they can hear and creating that map, and also things like colour palettes to get a real idea of the really notice different things around them and pick different objects up which match different colours. As well as that, we've got a whole range of activities which link to biodiversity, and again, different stuff schools are already doing, and you can do through us and some of the different providers which Molly mentioned at the start, and also lots of schools have access to amazing resources around them in their school grounds. So we do a lot of pond and stream dipping sessions and those sorts of biodiversity activities, bring together some of those different Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 and curriculum areas in secondary schools which link to the whole idea of ecosystems and habitats. And make that abstract concept of what habitat is and what an ecosystem is real. So we would, our pond sessions and stream sessions, for example, really hone in on what habitat we're looking at. And we spend a lot of time talking about energy flow through the ecosystem. So we talk about what are the primary producers in the pond or stream, what are the herbivores eating that, where the energy flows flowing from that up to your carnivores and your top carnivores, and we play energy flow games, talk about the loss of energy through the ecosystem, so running around with water and talking about how energy gets lost as you transfer it up the ecosystem, and linking that also with why environmentally there's some gains to be made by having less meat, because obviously you're losing energy if much of your food production is by eating meat, because you're every step of this journey up from the sun's energy going to plants, going to animals, we're losing some productivity. So we talk about that in that day, in those sessions, and we also introduce key stage 1 and 2 concepts like dichotomous keys to help people identify different species, well, different organisms down to family level in ponds and streams, and then use that to identify where they are in terms of trophic structure, so whether they're herbivores or carnivores or top carnivores. And as linked to that, on our marine days, we do take a lot of groups down to Kilve Beach, because 3 of our centres are really close to the Somerset coast, and again it's landscapes which you could access for a number of different providers, and also take groups yourself to the amazing different parts of Somerset to bring in that marine principle. And when we're going to places like Kilve Beach, we talk a lot about adaptations of different organisms. So my favourite is limpets. I love limpets. I think they're amazing. People don't realise how incredible they are. But just one key thing about them is their tongue. The picture just to the left of the limpet is a zoomed in picture of their radula under a scanning electron microscope, and it's as tough, one of the toughest substances made by any natural creature, and it can scrape off the top layer of rock as it goes along and eats the algae attached to the rock. So we talk about different adaptations of organisms and why they're so special, but we also have a big focus on our coastal studies around change. So both the coastal processes, which are changing on a sort of decade and 100-year time scale, but also geological time frames. So we look at for fossils and how that links with us during the Jurassic period and what the climate would have been like in a marine environment 300 million years ago, if you were here on the North Somerset coast, but then underneath the sea. We also talk quite a bit about photosynthesis, because people talk about how important trees are to photosynthesis, but oceans are responsible, or the organisms within oceans are responsible for half of the photosynthesis if you're measuring it by primary productivity and biomass. So 95% of that 50% is photosynthesizing algae floating around, and then seaweeds. And we talk about how important that is in terms of carbon stores, and we also talk about climate feedback mechanisms, and particularly the idea of if our climate warms up, we're going to have the problem of ocean acidification and the feedback mechanisms that might create in terms of destroying some of the stores of carbon dioxide in our alkaline rocks underneath the sea. And we also, with marine studies, link in with litter. So we go around and collect litter, and then we graph that litter to bring in a concept of maths. So we talk about time in the environment and the impact it has on the environment, and map different substances we collect on litter studies to bring in that concept of how long marine plastics and the impact of microplastics have on the marine environment. Another strand of we focus on is recycling and environmental living, because obviously if you're going on a residential with us, you've got that opportunity to talk about the different impacts you have of day-to-day living. So we've got lots about recycling around our centres, and also talking about food and sustainability and food choices, being vegetarian and the carbon footprint of different foods is a key strand of our residential processes. And we've also, I've got a picture of Charthouse there, because when we redeveloped the site about 15 years ago, we put in lots of eco-friendly elements. So there's a cedar roof, lots of insulation in the buildings, other energy conservation aspects of the building, which we could talk about when groups come to us. And we've got explicit links to energy consumption as part of some of our different maths activities. So one really easy activity you can do at any school grounds or at one of our centres is calculating the area of different walls and different windows, and then using U values to calculate energy loss, which is one of the things we do with some of our year 6 and older students when they visit us. And of course, when you're coming to one of our centres, you can, or you're in Somerset, you can combine that with visiting different local locations which link to energy consumption and production to bring in that different type of concept. And I suppose we're really keen in trying to link environmental understanding with outdoor learning, because we think it broadens the curriculum and it makes it more sticky when you're learning about those concepts. It makes it a bit more real. So that's one of the things I'm really keen to talk to people about. If they've got any ideas or they want to explore how they might use their school grounds, or they want to talk about different things they could do at one of our centres, I'm really keen to explore that, because I'm really interested in how just doing stuff is very tactile, and that impacts on how well the young people can recall that knowledge, but also link it to other knowledge, which links to many of the changes made in the Ofsted assessment framework a couple of years ago, which is just coming into all the reassessments of Ofsted visits, which are coming around to schools at the moment. And in terms of research to back that up, there's loads of research like Learning Away, research done into the impact of residentials on learning in primary schools, and a load of research on how reading and writing can be improved by targeted outdoor learning, which brings in many of the sorts of activities I've just very briefly outlined. And so we're really keen at Kilve and at Charthouse and at Greatwood to really talk about how we can not just run a residential at the end of year 6, but also integrate that in to the other curriculum areas people are studying and the wider curriculum. So how we can sort of start our year groups journey to learning off really well at the start of the year with September and October trips, which you can probably hear out the window at the moment as people have come back to us after COVID, and we're running lots of those programmes, which lots of schools are using those as an inspiration for different topic work they're doing over the next couple of terms. And there's lots of different ways we're trying to make sure that the activities we're doing link with the wider curriculum. So, I mean, we've already mentioned it. I've already briefly mentioned some of the different maths activities we're doing, but there's loads of different things around symmetry, people doing the school grounds and plotting data, doing fractions and angles outdoors, and algebra and arrays with natural objects. And I suppose one thing I'm just going to very briefly mention is one thing we're really pushing for at our outdoor centres at the moment and thinking really hard about is how we make sure those different outdoor activities, particularly where we're trying to engage with the curriculum fully and bring in those environmental aspects, are as accessible as possible so that everyone from a school can access them. So making sure that if people have got special requirements, that we build that in, and thinking about how we make sure, for example, young people with wheelchairs are accessing those activities, and how we adapt those to make sure everyone in a group can be included, and working really carefully with teachers and schools and parents that works effectively. So that's one of the things we've really been focusing on. And as well as our sort of mass year group programmes, which we run day activities and residentials, we've also, since COVID-19, significantly expanded our alternative provision programmes, where we're doing lots of those different activities with targeted cohorts of young people who are struggling to access the curriculum. So lots of one-to-one work where young people come to us on a regular basis, or small groups coming from schools and colleges, where we're providing regular provision in partnership with people like Young Somerset. And that's a new strand to what we're offering at our outdoor centres, and we can build in a lot of our science, the science work and eco sustainability elements. I very briefly skimmed over the last couple of minutes, and I put my contact details, but it's gone a little bit askew there. So if anyone has got any questions about outdoor learning or wants to talk about any aspects of outdoor learning, I'm always really keen to explore different ideas, and I'll put my email in the chat as well, so it's not so hidden by a Twitter logo. Is that okay, Molly? Has anyone got any questions?
That's amazing. Thanks, Daniel. Yep. Anybody got any questions on what Daniel's just spoken about? I think it was really, really interesting that you mentioned at the end there the alternative provision that the team have been doing, something they've worked really hard on over the COVID pandemic. I say that because I'm scared to say it as though it's over, because we know we're carrying on and living with it. But absolutely wonderful, all the different things that SSE Outdoors can do and how they can link to the curriculum. Do feel free to put your hand up for any other questions linked to any of the speakers that we've had today. In the meantime, I'll just do a short plug for tomorrow's workshop, which is going to involve speakers from ProVeg, Mode Shift Stars, which is to do with travel, and GLADE, which is global citizenship. So hopefully we'll see some of you there. And in that case, if nobody's got any questions, we can finish for the day. Lovely, thank you, Anna. Yep, and hopefully I'll see some of you tomorrow.